Okay, so when we take the inverse of both sides, that is, the purpose of doing that is to solve for an unknown angle. So what happens then is these two signs on the left are opposites. And what usually happens when we have opposites in math? Any thoughts? Okay. Like when we have a squared on a variable, how do we get rid of that squared? Square root, but why? Because they're opposites and they cancel each other out. Cancel. That was the word I was looking for. It's okay. Okay, so these two will cancel out. So all we'll be left with is A equals. And then just bring down what was up here. So sine inverse of x. And that's where we will use our calculator and just type that into our calculator to get our answer. This will probably make more sense when we add numbers to it, but this is essentially what we'll be doing. Okay, so same thing will happen for cosine. So we'll take the cosine inverse of what was there on the left, so cosine of A, and then also take the cosine inverse of the other side. So whatever was already there, so x. So then on the left, since we have both kinds of cosines, they cancel each other out. So all we have is A equals and then cosine inverse of x. Okay, and then repeat that process for tangent. It's going to look exactly the same. Okay, I know this probably makes no sense right now, but just hang with me. We'll get there. Okay, so here is the big question for today, is how do I know which one to use in my calculator? When do I use the regular button? When do I use the little -1 button? So here I'm going to start this little next section here. This is your notes for how to know. So when you need to find a side, you use the regular buttons. You use sine, cosine, tangent. Okay, when you are finding an unknown angle measure, right, like the degrees inside the triangle, this is when you use the inverse buttons. Okay, so these two examples here at the bottom, notice the question mark is on the inside. So both of these are angle questions, meaning we are going to use the inverse buttons. Okay, so your first step is the same. Label your triangle, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. Since this is the angle we're finding, that's what we're going to go off of. So our hypotenuse is the blank side. Opposite is that 6. Okay, and 11 is adjacent. Okay, so we still have the kind of the same next step as well. Picking if we have to use sine, cosine, or tangent. So let's figure out, okay, my hypotenuse is blank. So let's look over there. Which ones use hypotenuse? Okay, so we cannot use those two, right? Because those are blank. There's nothing there. So we have to use tangent. Okay? So we're going to write tan, parenthesis. And then I'm going to change the question mark to X just because question mark is kind of weird to write. What? Okay. And then equals your two sides. Now we know both sides, right? So we are actually going to plug in both side lengths because our unknown is in the parentheses spot now. So let's see. Tangent is opposite on top, adjacent on the bottom. So now our variable is in this little parentheses spot instead of the fraction spot like we did with the sides. Okay, let's go ahead and set up the other one before we solve it so we can get that kind of done. Okay, so go ahead and label your three sides from this angle. Okay, Tyler, what's my hypotenuse? Okay. Dylan, what's my opposite? What? Okay, yeah, it's blank, not there. Devin, what's my adjacent? What side is my adjacent? Okay. Okay, so then you ask yourself, what side is blank? So look at the picture. What side is there nothing there? Okay, so then look at your three trig functions. Eliminate the ones that use opposite. Okay, so what are we left with? Okay, so we are going to use cosine. And then our angle is our unknown, so we're going to put x in the angle spot. Equals your fraction, so your two side lengths. Okay, so adjacent goes on top, and hypotenuse goes on the bottom. Okay, questions about setting it up? Okay, so now here's where I personally like this better than solving for sides because it's honestly kind of easier once you get it down. Okay, so to solve for this, we're going to do just like we did in this chart. It's going to look like that. We're going to take the inverse tan of both sides of our equal sign. So I'm going to have to kind of write smaller, but we're going to take the inverse tan of what was already there above that. And then you also need to take the inverse tan of the fraction. Okay, so the nice thing that happens with this is now I'm going to actually cross these out because those cancel each other out. So all we have is x equals tan inverse of 6 over 11. Okay, so kind of like with the sides, once your variable is by itself, you are ready to use that calculator to get your answer. Okay, so go get the inverse tan in your calculator. And then type in your two numbers. So 6 divided by 11. And then hit enter. And you should get a number between 1 and 89. Because we're talking about angles now. Did you guys get this? Anyone not get this? Anyone else not get it? Okay, so 28, let's round to nearest 10th, 28.6 degrees. So it looks like a lot of work, but really all you're really mainly just using that calculator to find the answer. Okay, so on this one, we're going to take the inverse cosine of both sides. Okay, so your cosines will cancel out. So then you're left with x equals the inverse cosine of 45 over 57. Now our variable is by itself, so you're ready to use your calculator. Okay, so did you guys get this? 37.9? Okay, and this is an angle, so I always add my little degree symbol.